What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Path of the Network Marketer. Is day 48, episode 48. All right. Yes. Okay, that was close. I almost did another Matthew McConaughey, only because I'm super excited. It's 48. We're that much closer to our halfway mark, number 50. So a lot of exciting stuff. And then on top of that, there's so much going on in my life right now. I'm getting ready to leave town to go to our annual conference. And, you know, with my particular company, Yoli, there's so much happening. There's so many new things that we're about to launch from the marketing standpoint and the business standpoint. We're really just changing the business up and making it even easier for individuals like myself, like you and I, individuals like you and I, to start creating real income, right? Not just like the $50 here, $20 here every month, but like significant, steady monthly income that could supplement what you're already doing, or of course replace what you're currently making in whatever profession you're in. Just thereby expanding the network marketing opportunity, to people who didn't necessarily think that it was for them, to people who didn't necessarily think that they could do it. So a lot of exciting stuff on that end. And if you want to know more, of course, reach out to me. My company is called Yoli. You can definitely look it up, but come find me. I can answer your questions on that. So there's a lot happening on that end. I'm on like the personal, excuse me, the personal end. I'm just really excited about everything that I've been learning and the direction that things are going. I feel like I'm really starting to hit a stride here with the show, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I really should save this for episode 50. I mean, I have notes for today, for today's episode, so I might as well follow them. But I mean, the whole point is I'm super excited about where things are right now. I'll explain more in episode 50 for our 50th celebration. Today, I really want to continue our conversation, right? Keep tracking through what we've been talking about in the last couple of episodes yesterday. We've been talking about culture, and then we've been talking about the different kind of belief systems and definitions that you carry about yourself, and how conversations, especially, well, I mean, because I'm a network marketer, right, and being in this profession for 16 plus years, the conversations I have in this profession are really just kind of endemic of as forward thinking as we say we are. I feel that there is a lot of gatekeeping. There's a lot of stagnant thinking. There's a lot of fixed mindsets, right? And so we have to really, really be careful. I'm going to always preach this particular idea that we really have to always challenge our ways of thinking, our own definitions, our own belief systems constantly, right? So that we can continue to innovate and keep up with what's going on in the marketplace, right? So that we can continue to evolve as a profession. And that goes back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the show about what my company's doing, and then of course what I'm doing individually. Anyways, again, I'll save that for the 50th episode. So in today's show, I want to continue to that through line, and tracking back to the different types of cultures that you can create. Again, this is not a conversation about wrong or right, but I really want to impress upon you, just from my experience, what I have seen, my observation, also what I have experienced to work in terms of longevity, in terms of stability in the long term. Now, I'm not going to say that one system or one type of community is better than the other. Again, it's not. This is not that kind of conversation, but it really depends on what you're looking for, right? Right. Now, again, tracking back to the episode on culture, we talked about. Well, I mentioned two predominant, prevailing cultures that we find in network marketing. That's a profit-driven culture, or like a culture that's driven by production. And then there's the cultures that are driven by community and driven by impact, driven by connection, right? And so like these are not so much like intentional, I don't think. I mean, communities and cultures in network marketing, I think in anything, aren't necessarily as intentional as we would like to believe they are. I think they're really more of a reflection of the individuals that gravitate towards each other. It's as simple as that. So, as you move forward in your own business and in your own network marketing career, you got to really kind of, I don't know, just kind of figure out what resonates with you, and go find that community, number one, and then start creating it for yourself, and for your own business, number two. With a profit driven company, again, not company, but culture, that's all well and good. It's fine. I mean, profit is great, right? We all get into network marketing to make income. And again, I want to reiterate that this isn't so much like a cut and dry, black and white situation. It's more of wherever these things lie on a spectrum. The cultures that lean more towards the profit side, it doesn't mean that they don't like connection and community. Of course they do, right? Of course. I mean, they rely, a culture that is driven by profit, is driven by production, relies on connection, relies on community in order to build that profit, in order to build that production. However, it's not primary, right? Like the connection, the community isn't necessarily primary. It's secondary to the profits and the production. The one drawback with this kind of culture is that often some people get left behind. Right, like if there's somebody that's not necessarily producing, or doesn't necessarily align with the kind of personalities that are really, in this profession we go by the colors, right? By Red Owl, not Red Owl, Big Al is one of the legends, that teaches the different colors of personalities. You have a profit driven culture, which really consists mostly of red type of personalities. And so what happens when somebody who isn't a red personality just gets sponsored into, through no volition of their own, or just happenstance, gets pulled into, and joins an organization that's red driven and profit driven, but they're more looking for connection and community. Like sometimes, they just get left behind. They just get kind of ignored and left by the wayside. And a lot of times, another drawback is like people get blown out of the water, or people even get burned. Because it's like, oh, you got to produce. Why aren't you producing this week? Why aren't you doing your IPAs, your 3 IPAs a day? And it's a very, again, it's not wrong or right, but it's a very, it doesn't, because the numbers and the production, and therefore the profit is the primary target and aim of those cultures. It doesn't factor in the necessarily the human aspect of it, right? The relationship aspect, because there's no predictability in relationships. There's no predictability in human nature. You can only predict numbers, right? So a numbers culture, a production culture, people do get left behind, and that's the unfortunate side effect. Also, too, with these kind of cultures, well, yeah, I mean, like, you can find profit in other places. Profit and well, I feel like, anyways, I feel like it's more of a chase. It's you're chasing the profit. And because of that, there's less loyalty, to the community than there would be in a connection driven community and culture. Because if the profit isn't being had or being made, if there's no production, then typically what an individual, or groups of individuals will do is go find that somewhere else, right? And that's why you see company hopping and the next new deal. I mean, again, I've been in my company, that I'm with right now to this day. I've been with this company for 13 plus years. And in that time that I've been with this company, and I've done very well, and I continue to do well, the people who got started with us in this company when we launched, I know individuals that have been in 10 companies since, maybe even more. Right. And so, yeah, you can find profit in other places. And if that's what your deal is, that's great. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't get into the profession to chase profits. I got into the profession to create a lifestyle for myself. And I didn't want to have, I didn't want to always have to grind, and that's to me what I see profit chasing. That's how I feel about profit chasing, right? I don't want to have to start over every 3 years, or even, like some people, every 12 months with a new company, just to chase the profits, right? I want to build something lasting. I want to build something strong and stable, and for me, that's what building a culture of connection really, really means. Um, yes, it's not necessarily going to produce as much income or productivity or profits in the short term, but I think it's a long term play, and if that's okay with you, then I think again, you can create a really, really stable business if you're willing to take the time that it takes to do that with this kind of culture. Yes, it's slower, but your connectivity is high and your stickiness is high, because that's what people come to the community for. And on top of that, you don't necessarily blow people out of the water. Now, again, this is all on a spectrum, right? Like a community that thrives on a connection, a community or a culture that thrives on community and connection, still likes production. Obviously, I definitely, I like money, like I like profits. That's why I got into this business. But it's for me personally, by making community, by making connection primary, the production and the profitability just happen as a result of that, right? And the stickiness happens as a result of that. Yes, again, I understand it takes longer, but I would rather have it this way. And again, this is just my personal sensibility. It takes time to build, but it also lasts longer. I mean, yeah, yeah. It's just one of those things, and I think for me, being somebody who is slow, it like I was a little bit slower on the take. Like, I mean, it took me a long time to become profitable in my business. It took me a long time to start really making income. I mean, who would stick with anybody for 6+ years, right? And that's how long it took me, right? Like two companies before my current company, it was about a year and a half, 2 years in each of those. And so, by the time I got into my company, it still took me another 3 years to start making income, right? So it was a long time, but I was willing to do it, and I was willing to go through it. And on top of that, there were people that supported me along the way, right? That didn't leave me behind, and that didn't forget about me just because I wasn't producing. And so I think because of that, well, partly because of that, I want to do the same for people, because I know there are people out there that had as difficult a time as I did. I know there are people out there that maybe will take as long as I take. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have individuals, I have leaders in my organizations that got to where I got in my profession in not even half the time, right? In like 12 months, 24 months. I've had leaders take off with huge success. But that wasn't my own trajectory necessarily, and so I recognize that that's not going to be everybody else's trajectory, and that there are people, again, that potentially still want to fulfill their dreams through this business, but need a little bit more patience, they need a little bit more time, and need a little bit more connection. And of course, the last thing is, some people just want to stay in just to stay in, just for the connectedness. I have people in my organization that have been in for 10 years, maybe more, who have never made a single sale. And you know what? That's okay. And you might be thinking, well, that's crazy, Ronnie. That is absolutely nuts. You've got in this thing to do business. Sure, yeah, yeah, it's true. I did. I got into this business to make money, but I'm also not going to close the doors or turn anybody away or even forget anybody. Sometimes the most marginalized people that don't get the attention in our profession are the ones that need the most, right? That are the ones that just really all they need, and and all they wish for, even unconsciously, is to have somebody there, a community that they can lean on. And if that's what they're here for, I'm okay with having them there, right? Right. If they're not making a profit, if they're continuing to use our products, they're staying healthy. If they're continuing to stay connected to the community, then they have people that they can lean on, no matter what they're going through in their lives. We live in a time and age that, yeah, I mean, like, there's little. Well, I don't know. I'm not going to make that judgment about the world, because I do actually believe in the inherent goodness of human beings. But I know from personal experience that like the world can feel disconnected, right? And so if we can create communities of inclusion, I'm here for it, right? I'm here for it. And the only way really, the way you create, okay, so this is the bottom line in this episode. It's much longer than I thought it was going to be and that I intended it to be, but there's a lot that we're talking about. The way to create community, or the way to create culture in your organization, is really cultivate it within yourself. And that's what I did. I cultivated compassion. I cultivated understanding. I cultivated, being able to communicate and hear, right? That's communication. That's a big part of communication, is hearing what the other person is saying, and empathizing with them. And as I cultivated that in myself, don't get me wrong, like I have made many mistakes. I will continue to make mistakes. I've definitely burnt people. I've definitely blown people out of the water, especially early in my career. But I've continued to really work on the things that I just said, right? Like worked on the compassion, worked on the understanding, worked on hearing and listening, worked on empathizing. And as I cultivate that in myself, then that reflects in how I interact with people. That reflects in the conversations I have with people. That reflects in how I treat people in and outside of my organization. And ultimately, the more I do that, the more, well, that's what creates the culture, right? Then the ripple effect of how I interact with people goes out into the world. It'll not only attract and draw the same kind of people to me, but again, the stickiness of having that level of connectedness and that level of community, it just reverberates out from there. So it all really starts with you, and you got to ask yourself, what are you willing? What drives you, right? What drives you? Is it profit, which is fine? Is it community and connection, which is also fine? And just understand that there are different aspects and pros and cons to each of those things wherever you lie on the spectrum. So that's going to do it for today's episode. That's actually really, really long. This is the longest episode yet. So anyways, I'm just going to go with it. I was thinking I could cut this into like 3 separate episodes, but why do that? It was a nice conversation, and I would hate to have to re-record all of that. Anyways, that's going to do it. Yeah. Tomorrow we're going to talk more about what drives you and what motivates you, and kind of the mindset part of it. So yeah, tune in tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe. We'll see you in the next episode.